We have made our fair share in these 13 years of
I love the we, boy. Boy,
I speak French now.
how we, we.
We have made our fair share of
Okay.
fun in the moment, but regretful in hindsight decisions. Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Julian. And today we are celebrating and talking about what we've learned in 10 years of marriage.
Yay.
10 years, decade.
Don't sound so happy about it. Good Lord. Big sigh. And today.
Oh, shit. 10 long years. Well, first, I want to give a shout out to the married folks out there who are all our internet cousins. We got a bunch of them. This one is Jamil, who left a comment on Spotify a few weeks ago on the episode where we were talking about couples and money, what it really takes to handle money together. He said, "Thank you guys for an honest conversation about money. This episode, I learned how to approach money conversations in a better way, not to attack or be critical."
Yes.
I'm sure his wife will appreciate that. I have been there. All right. So 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years. We are on the 10th floor of whatever.
Quite the view.
However long this building is, it's still going up. How you feeling? It's been 10 years.
Feels
It's been 10 years of marriage. It's been longer, dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been good. I feel like when you hit the 10th floor, you start to see things that you couldn't really see that well on the second floor.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can see above the trees now.
Well, it's funny, a 10-year, you think about a 5-year and how silly of a, not to be dismissive of anybody out there who's coming up on 5 years, but, that's certainly an effect of it. You think about 1 year.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what were we celebrating in 1 year? what you...
Moving in together.
Boy, you off the ground floor. You know what I'm saying? And now it's like 10. Now, and I'm confident that, you hit 15, 20, you get to looking back at 10, talking about how you feel like you won't give some advice after 10, right? So, no, I think, obviously our relationship and things aside, one of the things that I definitely notice is as you grow and get older and you're married for a longer period of time and you reflect back on the other couples who were with you right along that same time, you cannot help but to think about like how you've changed, how they've changed, how a lot of folks did not make it this far.
Mm-hmm.
Their conversations are changing. You start to see differences in the way that you all decided to, let's say, manage your money or conversations and decisions around children. And so that's where I think a lot of the lessons come into play, because it's not to be judgmental or critical of anybody else, but I think what it forces you to do is to think about the decisions that you've made as an individual, the decisions that you've made as a couple. And I think what happens is you start to understand like both sides or all sides of these kinds of conflicts, which I think is really, really helpful, right? So just right off the top, right? Like have as many conversations and engagements with other couples who are in a similar situation. Don't get all crazy with it. Like, well, they ain't been together 10 years yet. I'm not going to take their advice.
No.
But just having these kinds of conversations with people, you really start to have a better appreciation for the decisions that you've made, whether they worked out better for you or not. But you just learn a lot just from having those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I think once you hit 10 years, one of the things that changes, and this is not just 10 years, it's just the longer that you're in a marriage, you start to have realer conversations about marriage with your friends and family.
Yeah.
And as I think about the last couple of years for us, like we have watched friends, very close friends, navigate separations, divorces, and then changing their mind about both of them all at once. And we've had a front row seat. Like they have been very clear about what they're feeling, where the tension is. And you're right. It's so much easier to understand both sides.
Yeah.
I think when you're just starting in your relationship, you're going to take the side of the person you've known the longest. When you've been in a relationship, you're like, I understand. At the same time, I also understand this position.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember the advice that we got when we were getting married, being very honest. Like I have always known in my family to have like long lasting marriages. And so we got honest advice like super early. And I remember being almost a little too honest. I was
Who you
like,
talking about?
just from my dad and from my cousins and even some of my aunts and uncles, like they were given wisdom. And we were just very excited to just be married. Like, I remember one of the speeches at our wedding, my cousin Robin was like, "You gonna wanna
Oh
torch his
yeah.
clothes.
You
You
gonna
gonna
want to just throw his
wanna."
drawers in the garbage, and you gonna. I was like,
Yeah.
God, she just
I was
kept.
like, this is the toast. Like, what we say? So now I find myself trying not to bog down newlyweds with this stuff, like with this wisdom. Some of it is very real. So part of the motivation for this episode is not just to celebrate our 10-year marriage, which is a celebration in and of itself, but it's also because it's easier to make a podcast about it than to tell
Is it?
some of our newlywed, like we got a couple of newlywed friends in our life. And it's like, they haven't bought a house together yet. They haven't had a kid yet. Like, you don't want to just be like, look,
That's gonna be
things
different.
change.
Yeah, that's different.
Prepare yourself.
Yeah, it's different. You buy a house with somebody who got it. They got their own house. They got a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. You can't just
Yeah.
move out. I
No,
mean, you
no.
can, but you still got that mortgage.
That's a different process. Yeah, I love it.
All right. So we're going to go over some of the lessons that we've learned. These are, hard earned lessons. We've certainly earned the wisdom that come with them. And the first one is that even in a strong partnership, it's really complicated when one person's idea requires y'all's money, right? So like a lot of couples have this you, me, we approach to money. You got your money, I got my money, and then we got our money together.
Yeah, some ideas I need us money.
Yes, like what is less discussed is when my idea requires we money, us money. And so we've had these moments where like a personal dream or responsibility needed we money in order to happen, whether it's a business move or supporting a parent or a family member or even an investment that one of us is interested in. And it's tricky because it's not asking permission, but it's also like not going rogue and just saying, I'm about to do this, FYI. And then one person might be emotionally all in because they've spent more time with the idea, and the other person might be more financially cautious. And then last but not least, the dream's upside or the responsibility, the idea's upside is so much easier to picture for the person who dreamed it. Like the investment is always going to feel riskier to the person where the payoff is more fuzzy. And I think we've just both learned that it's not just about agreeing on the math. It really is about agreeing on how to protect the relationship when the risk reward ratio is uneven for each person. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just, it's hard. It's hard because one person might see the back and forth as unnecessary for a decision that is technically theirs to make. Like, I'm allowed to make a decision in our marriage. And the other person feels like, no, that's just collaboration. And you're supposed to tell me when you're about to do something because we're one. Like, it requires so many conversations, especially when it comes to shared things like parenting, housing, families, vacations, all that stuff.
Yeah. And, just for anybody out there who's listening, who is, let's say, on the lower end of that 10-year mark, maybe you're newlywed, maybe you aren't married yet at all. These big decisions, like, just don't take them lightly, right? Like buying that house, you want to know when you're going to have the argument? I'm telling you right now, it's going to be right around those two really, really big decisions, right? It's like anytime there's a really big decision that is like super layered, that's going to be uncomfortable for someone, whether it's buying a house for the first time or deciding to have children, that is going to stir up some things that you have absolutely no idea, and things that you legitimately cannot prepare for, aside from just having conversations with friends. But we're not talking about those kinds of big old decisions. These are more like the medium-sized decisions that still have significant weight to them, specifically as it relates to money, because you ain't got enough on your own. You really kind of need to check in with your partner. And I'll give you a couple of tips here, right? And again, speaking from personal experience, it's going to take you some time to figure out what that rhythm is. And it's very childlike in a way. Like, just like our son knows there's a certain way that he can phrase things, or a certain time of the
don't
day
ask me for stuff
that he can ask for something. Like he knows not to come barging in the door and ask him, us to buy something. It's like, no, let me do everything I need to do first. And you're not going to do that with your partner. Obviously, again, the dynamic and the power imbalance or balance is different than it is with a parent and a child. But I learned, for example, like she's not a morning person.
No.
And there are times where I wake up because I feel like, man, like the idea has hit me and I really gotta like capture lightning in a bottle. And, I'm downstairs and it's always on those days where it kind of feels like she's taking extra long to come downstairs. And it's like, if you would just come down here, I'd just tell you everything, let you get your coffee. Now, listen, I'm telling you this is going to be
This is what we
popping.
about to do.
This is what we about to do. And, if I got to go upstairs, like I've learned, it's like, if I got to go upstairs, it's like, I should have just stayed downstairs. Like I should let her come down to the medium, to the middle ground.
To the middle floor.
To the middle floor. If I got to go upstairs, I'm antsy, right? You know what I mean? So it's little things like that, right? You just like find, the rhythm. You understand exactly when and how to kind of pitch these ideas because that's ultimately what you are doing. You are basically pitching the other person and seeking their kind of buy-in, if you will. And the other thing is to not lead with cost. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right? Like don't lead with the cost. Butter them up. This is no different than what you would try to do with your managers. Like, look, man, I found this thing, go layer, at least 3 layers. And
start
then
with
say,
the why.
Yeah. But now if you go too many layers,
there's
then
too
it's
much
like,
dip
all
on the
right,
chip.
like you look. You setting me up for the okie doke.
What
Like,
you
all right,
want?
so here's the thing. It's gonna be about $10,000. This gonna be about $50,000. But like that's too much. So you got to figure out exactly what the right amount of layers are, right? And everybody's gonna be different. You know what I mean? I will also say when it comes to things like confidence, you have to trust that this person knows you, in ways that you don't recognize, you know what I mean? So they can kind of tell when you are kind of like faking the confidence because you really, really want to get the buy-in versus when you believe it so deeply, right? Like I certainly know, like I've had some great ideas and there is a way that I communicate those ideas where it's like, oh, wow. Like you're absolutely right. And then there are other days where you can kind of tell that it's a good idea, but I'm trying to bring great idea energy to the table.
Yes.
And it just, it's like, it's not that the idea is not worthy of exploring. But when you're talking about financial implications, the question is ultimately, does this idea warrant investment, right? And how much of an investment does this idea deserve?
Yes.
And that's a much more difficult question because you don't ever want to feel like a good idea is not worthy of investment. But if you ain't got it, you ain't got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you need somebody else to buy in. And so it's difficult, but like it takes time, it takes experience. But once you find that rhythm, I think it's something that needs to be respected. And you also need to respect the fact that the person knows you in ways that you don't even recognize.
That's it. I would say that your partner can usually tell when you are faking confidence, meaning too much dip on the chip, but they can also tell when you are borrowing somebody else's confidence. Sometimes you are so confident in somebody else's idea that you can't answer any questions for yourself. Like you are describing your answer based on what they said. Well, she said,
or based on their results,
or based on their results.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that creates an issue in this category of like trying to use we money for your idea. Like it truly needs to be your idea. I wouldn't pitch it or suggest it until you have your own conviction to know that it's something that you believe in and not just something that Erica did or Jerome did or whoever did. Like, and that goes for online personalities included. Like, it has to be your idea if you need we money.
Yeah, especially Jerome.
I made that name up. I ain't met a Jerome in a minute. If there's a Jerome, go leave a 5-star comment.
I've known one Jerome,
shout you out.
And he was a hustler.
Jerome in the house. Watch Matt. All right, so that's the first lesson. The second lesson is around how we handle the stupid tax, which I am borrowing from Dave Ramsey. I don't normally like. Yeah, I don't normally like when he says it, but it's his accent, like it's his tone that be off. But this is like when I say stupid tax, I mean the price of a decision that looked fine in the moment when we made it, but then wasn't actually fine in the end. Like you still have to cover that cost. That cost is a stupid tax. And we have made our fair share in these 13 years of...
I love the weed, boy. Well,
I
I
speak
love
French now.
how we, we,
We have made our fair
mm,
share of
okay.
fun in the moment,
Mm.
but regretful in hindsight decisions, whether, again, it's overspending on an experience or investing in something that went nowhere, whether it's a business or an idea that we've had on our own. It's hard to even call them dumb or stupid because some of those losses actually brought us great stories or
Great
memories,
relationships,
great
friendships.
relationships.
Hmm.
Others taught us how we really define value and what needs to change in the way that we define value. But I think the key to all of these mistakes is the way that we process them. Like, we're not doing this endless autopsy on the situation. You know, people in your lives who just can't let nothing go. They got to diagnose it and look at it from every corner, despite the fact that it's dead and gone. Like, it's it's already gone.
Yeah.
We really just try to call it and move on. But one of the things that I now recognize is that we have a different pace on doing that. Julian is what I like to call a delayed processor. Like, it takes him a little while for things to settle in. I am more of a processor while it's happening. Like, I'm attuned to what's
No,
happening. Now, the problem with that is that I am not always accurate. Like,
you
I
are not.
might,
You busy processing. She
yeah,
is
I might
processing.
misread the situation,
Oh yeah, like
but
you got 2 out of the 10 clues. You have made up your mind. You stopped listening. About 20% of the way through because you already know what they're getting ready to say, and
exactly.
then you come
Well, I
home
do.
talking to me about the subtext. It was like I wasn't listening to. I was listening to the actual
Text.
words, the actual
The
text.
subtext is everything. You got to read between them
But
lines.
see, this is why like that next day is important. It was like, look, what did you hear?
Right.
Right. And we found that like there is an interpretation gap
There is.
there. And it's like, all right, you heard what? Was like, look, I didn't get any of that. I didn't hear that. What he said was this. And that's
And then I'm like, but did you see who he looked at when he said
right.
it?
Well,
Did
yeah,
you see?
and you know why he did it. I was like, okay, I wasn't listening or paying attention to none of that.
You didn't see how he stuttered
I
when
did
he
not.
said,
I just heard. I was waiting for the number. I was trying to take notes. You know what I mean?
uh,
But our shared interpretation is usually pretty spot on.
yeah,
And that's usually what comes the very next day. But even still, whether we agree on how we want to interpret things, which is very business savvy of us, right? Like this happens, by the way, everywhere in every aspect of life. This isn't just in the context of marriages, but these things happen, and even still, you have the shared interpretation. A lot of these things don't work out. You're still going to end up paying what you're calling a stupid tax based on your interpretation
hmm,
of the information that was presented to you. And I think getting used to that and understanding what your own success rate or what your shared success rate is a really, really important part of this. And the downside to that, I will say, is that somebody's going to be on the losing end of that scale, right? Like
yes,
somebody's going to be consistently presenting ideas and falling in love with these ideas. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their ideas aren't worthy of investment or that every time they mention something, it never works out. Because that dynamic exists with a lot of people. There are a lot of husbands in particular that I know that have this bad reputation of always kind of falling in love with something, bringing it, asking for us money and things not working out. And then all of a sudden they become demonized or labeled as being impulsive. I get it. Like it happens, but you kind of have to trust that this is your partner in life and they still have value. Like there's still value in their interpretation
yes,
of the information, right? The
absolutely.
ROI is separate from that. Like whether or not it panned out is separate from that. But if you guys can build enough of a strong relationship and have strong enough communication skills to be able to clearly articulate how you interpreted something, that to me is what's actually most important because that
Yes.
has a ripple effect throughout every aspect of your relationship. So that part I think is what is most important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing beyond communication skills is to really understand your partner's tolerance levels for regret. Like, I think about regret or just wishing you could do something over, kind of like spice levels. There are some people who can tolerate a lot of that. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, I wish I could do that over." And then they try, right? That's what they do. They pick it up and they're like, "Well, maybe I can do this one differently." There are other people where if they experience a little bit of regret, if they just make one mistake, they're like, I don't even want to try no more.
Never
Like,
again.
I don't, never again.
Yeah.
And so you really got to identify what your partner's tolerance for that is and make room for it. I'm not saying you always have to accommodate it, But I'm saying that your ideas have to fit within their tolerance so that you don't affect your marriage in a real way.
Yeah. I will also say this. I think if you just look on the bright side, like, yes, you're going to have your fair share of stupid texts. You're going to have your fair share of regrets and decisions that you've made or that you two have made that did not quite pan out. But I tend to err on the side of at least you have a story to tell. And that's coming
Yeah.
from a place of privilege, but I get it. At least you have a story to tell, right? Versus being in your 40s and 50s and both of y'all are talking about all the things that y'all wish y'all would have did or that you didn't do.
Hmm.
Like that to me is absolutely horrifying. Like I will never forget when I met I'll leave their names out of it, but I remember meeting one of my friends' partner. They've now been married for just as long as we have, for the very first time. And we were just eating, and I was actually eating. They were just talking the whole time. Like they were sharing all of these stories and examples of places that they've been and all these crazy adventures that they've been on. And I remember I was in a relationship at the time. This is before I met Kirsten. And I was just like, I ain't got no stories, dog. Like, like I just don't have that. And I realized, like, not to like compare, the girl that I was with at the time, but it was really a matter of like, I don't really want to have adventures with her. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not how our relationship is. And so, as I was thinking about like what the future was like, I was like, man, I don't want an adventureless
Right.
relationship. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I don't consider myself much of a risk taker. I'm way more of a risk taker these days than I probably ever have been in my life. But I just know that like you have to think about who you're with, and like you really do have to think about what the next 10 years to the best of your ability. Like,
Hmm.
who do you think you're going to be in your 50s? Do you envision that person with you? And if you can't, y'all need to have a conversation. Not because they may not be able to envision themselves with you as they think about who they'll be 10 years from
Yeah.
now either.
Yeah.
And that was such a really interesting question because it's practically impossible to answer. But to the best of your abilities, if you can figure out a way to work through that process and think about who you want to be and you all can come to an agreement on that, that's a beautiful thing. And I think
Hmm.
that's ultimately what's at the heart of what a marriage is.
Mm. It's beautiful. All right.
That's beautiful.
That is.
Whatever.
The third lesson is around how do I frame this? Like uneven seasons. There is so much advice around balance and fairness in a household right now. And I do think it's helpful. I think it's a great baseline. But I also find the words really limiting. Like I find the word balance and fair makes people immediately go to 50-50 as the only option.
Yeah.
And to me, like 50-50 happens sometimes, but like no one stays at 50-50 all the time. Like it's possible, but it's not a steady state. And so for us, I think embracing fluidity over fairness kind of keeps us in the game a lot longer instead of always keeping score to try to make sure that things remain 50-50. Like it's a lot of counting you got to do if you want things to remain 50-50. And that's coming from a bona fide stone cold scorekeeper. Like I love to win. So in my head, even if I'm not literally counting, I'm still trying to win. And I have had to calm that down in my marriage in this context of trying not to keep score because keeping score was making me miserable. Like it was really hard to do. And so when I do start to feel resentful or angry, I'm now wise enough to know that the scoreboard is the real issue, not whatever I think you're not doing. Because the reality is, there is so much that both of us do that neither one of us sees, not just for ourselves, but for our family, for each other. And if you can't see it, you can't count it. So the score is not going to be right anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever score you keep it in your head is not an accurate depiction of whatever that person has done for you or, in reference to you. And obviously, y'all, I'm not talking about people who are categorically bad partners. I'm talking about people in healthy relationships.
Yeah. I think one of the telltale signs that you might be a bit egotistical is your tendency to use, and I'm not saying you specifically, but I'm just saying in general, like the tendency to use these labels, like to just label one person as, and we talk about these labels with money as like the spender and the saver,
Hmm.
but it in a marriage is always like, I'm the one that is always blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I'm the responsible. When you hear this kind of language all the time, and there's not enough. acknowledgement of like the sense of superiority and inferiority that gets played
Hmm.
into this, like this presumed notion that I am always the hero. This person is always the loser. I am the one that always wins. I'm the one that always cleans up. I'm the one that
Yes.
always, you don't really ever think about what the other person sees and what impact that has on the dynamic of the relationship or how it may be sparking future or current conflicts and so on. I think we just need to acknowledge that when you are using those labels, there's a pretty strong, like to me, the use of those labels is an acknowledgement of your own blind spots. Like you are
Hmm.
basically putting on glasses and saying, I am only choosing to look at these things or look at our relationship through this lens. You are voluntarily missing out on the bigger picture.
Hmm.
And that to me is really unfortunate. And I think that's just important, whether you are the person who thinks you are the financially responsible one or not. Both of you, once you choose to look at your partner or to look at a situation through that very narrow lens, you are not collecting as much information and you're not really going to have productive conversations that way. You really do have to lay all the cards on the table, even the things that you didn't even think that you do. You know what I mean? Because you often find that there are people who may be the one who, just let's say you're the one that is, or I won't say bad with money, but like has the history of making harmful decisions with respect to the household finances. Those people's accomplishments to the health of that relationship are usually wildly diminished. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, because
Hmm.
they are just demonized and all of the things that they do are just considered secondary and tertiary because these other things are more important. And that to me is just so messed up and
Hmm.
such a really, really bad way of looking at the relationship as a whole. So that's what I would say. Like, I know we've spoken about that before, but when it comes to the idea of these uneven seasons, a lot of that is because people are looking at things through this weird ideal lens, like this
Yes.
notion that it should be 50-50 without thinking, well, no, it's 50-50 on average. You know what I mean?
Right.
You may be at 80% this season. You may be the hero, but I'm gonna tell you right now, there's gonna come a time, right? And grief is usually the catalyst, whether it's grieving a loss or grieving failure or something like that, where all of a sudden the hero is down bad
Yes.
and you are going to rely on this partner, this other person who may not necessarily be as adept at some of these things that you are good at.
Or they don't feel like they can be the hero
Correct.
if you've been the hero the whole time. Like that's the hero.
Correct.
That's to me what fluidity means. It means acknowledging that there are times where, like when you're together for so long, there are times where roles, balance, contributions, all of that stuff is going to shift. And in some seasons, it is constantly shifting. There are some weeks where every day it shifts. One day you take the lead, the next day I take the lead. And you really have to learn to look at reciprocity over a longer period of time. You can't just look at it within the week, within the month, within the year, where it's like, I've been doing all this stuff. When you going to do something for me? It's like, it may not be for 2 years. And I'm not saying, y'all know what I mean. Don't go extreme with it, but you may not feel the investment, the return on that generosity for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's just marriage. Like that's what happens when you are with somebody day in and day out for 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, whatever. Like you got to change that definition and that idea that you get something back immediately.
Yeah. And I'll tell you right now, you know, for those who are trying to skirt around that because they just are so attached to this identity that they've made for themselves, your friends will not help you in this. Like you actually
No.
have to be the one to do this. The only other person that could possibly help you do it is going to be like an elder, you know, somebody that's non-biased that can remind you of your own issues. Like, you know, it's normally like when a dad comes in and said, no, you know, you used to do the same thing when you was a kid, right? Like that's usually like the only people, but like between that person, maybe your therapist, your friends are not going to do this because your friends are so accustomed to you being a certain way
Yes.
all the time. So
But they're not around you all the
and
time.
they're not around you all the
They're
time
not
like that.
around you in every scenario. When you're
Your
with your friends, you're
partner,
probably happy.
correct.
Your
Your
partner sees
partner
every
sees
angle.
you a completely different way. And so I think this in a lot of ways is what allows people to like really double down, triple down on these identities. So all that to say, expect there to be uneven seasons when you are looking at it through a very short period, a month, a year. It might be a couple years, but like
Listen,
look, 3 bad years, but 50-50, over a decade is still balanced,
Yes.
in most people's world, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But there will be a time where you aren't able to do what you need to do and you need the other person to lift you up. So leave room for that and don't beat them down and just prepare that you got your own shit too.
Find you somebody who
It finds
says,
you somebody
he's a
who,
good man, Savannah. That's a
oh,
good man, Savannah. All right, the last lesson. The last lesson is about how we measure success so that it still excites us in year 20. And I think this is just an evolution of how we set goals and priorities as a family. As a general matter, we're just far less impressed by big numbers than we used to be.
hmm
We've learned that the best ROI on anything is how we control our time and our energy, and then we just spend where it matters. Like, we realize you don't have to wait until you hit this big number or until you make it to adopt this kind of mindset. In fact, the earlier you adopt this kind of mindset, the more your money and the better your money serves you. Like, you're not just always waiting for your money to do something for you. Like, you have money right now and you are allowing it to serve you in a way that still excites you and that can still excite you 20 years from now.
Yeah, I think this is really where I will say I feel wise for the very first time in my life. Like, I've never thought of myself as wise, but I'm in my mid 40s and I've got enough time both as a married person, as an investor, as an entrepreneur. Like, I've lived several lives. And so when I think back to when we first started out and, I was focused on paying off my car and my debts, and you were focused on paying off your credit cards and your car. And then we came together and we knocked out the mortgage. And then after that, we rolled into, rental properties and rehabbing the house and the mortgage and I'm sorry, the honeymoon and all those
Mm-hmm.
other things. Like that time where we were really working independently and then coming together to work together to knock out debts and to build wealth and to kind of lay the foundation for everything that we are benefiting from now, I think was likely, I wouldn't say the best time in terms of us riding a high in our financial lives or in our entrepreneurial lives, but it was the earliest indicator of like the beauty and the power of like truly collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
But then I remember going to Camp Fire and we had just found the fire movement. And by the way, there's like so much publicity. Like they just got featured on the news and there's like so much publicity around like adult camps these days. Or,
Yeah.
again, as a wiser person, it's like, wow, like, yeah, I did that in 2018 when it wasn't so popular. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that, I remember asking someone who had achieved their financial independence number at the time, like, I was like, what does it feel like the day you did it? Because to your point, like we were like back then, like really crunching numbers every single day and checking apps and like monitoring every sort of dollar in and out. And she was like, I mean, it's just another day. And I remember thinking like my first thought was, damn, that's messed up. Like she wouldn't like just be honest about like, like why did she not, does she feel weird? Like was that a weird question? And then I realized like no, like she was just being honest. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And that's when I realized like, oh, like we really do have to like chill out. You know what I mean? It's not to say that you should take your eye off the ball, but these numbers are just numbers on a piece of paper. Like they do not determine your happiness. You know what I mean? And I think it's around those times that even though we come up with it, like really started to understand and appreciate the regular aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that rich was just a small part of it. And I didn't want that to define us because it's just a number on a piece of paper. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And to your point, there's so many people who even now feel like in order to be happy, they have to stay in this weird sense of mania and obsession, and they aren't thinking about the impact that it has on their life, and they certainly aren't thinking about the impact that it has on their relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, yes, you are going to appreciate the work that you put in today, but you're likely going to regret that you were like so, quite honestly, weirdly obsessed, with this kind of stuff. Because this isn't the stuff that you want to be obsessed with. The
Mm-hmm.
things you want to be obsessed with are whether or not you are still in love with your partner, whether or not your parents are aging, and you're able to extract as much valuable insights from them as possible, because you're going to need that wisdom to carry you forward. And I would say most importantly, because this is the season that we're in, is realizing, we just got one kid, but he is very much deserving of our attention and focus. And so if we don't show up as a unit and fully charged and ready to protect him and to guide him, that's 100% going to be a regret. That's a lot of people's regrets 10
Mm-hmm.
years from now, 20
Mm-hmm.
years from now. And so all of that to say, you know, this is wisdom. This is what 10 years affords you, is to be able to look back and say, hey, all that stuff is cool, but it's not everything. When you hear somebody's giving you that counsel, don't dismiss it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
And don't just say it's easy for you to say.
that's one thing that I know for a fact I was really, really mindful of, because I referenced the campfire situation, but it wasn't just them. Like, we were
Mm-hmm.
really, really fortunate to have had some really deep, meaningful conversations with people. And the patterns were very, very clear, which is that all this money and all this stuff aside, man, if you're not right with that person, if y'all's relationship is not on point, it all goes away. Because a lot of those people got divorced, man. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
those people's relationships fell apart. And as a result, a lot of that big old pie that they saved up got split, and they started
Mm-hmm.
right on over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so, honestly, like Warren Buffett said it, tons of other people have said it. Like, that's the most expensive decision you could ever make, is a divorce. And so, with that information, the notion that you would choose to obsess over math and not the nature of the relationship or the health of the relationship or your own physical health or protecting the peace within your home is completely, that's neglect. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And so that's what I really, really just want to make sure that we kind of close on, is just like really thinking about that. Like, that is something that I think a lot of us tend to disregard. We try to over intellectualize success in our relationships, and it's not really something that derives from the head. It's something that derives from the heart. And it takes a lot of time and confidence and vulnerability. Like, that's the work that you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Like, not the apps and the number crunching. Like, leave that stuff, let it do what it do,
Yes.
but focus on the things that you know for a fact you're going to remember and want to look fondly back on, 10, 20 years from now.
Yes, yes, that's it. My parents have been married for 45 years, and I shared my dad's advice in our book, Cashing Out, when we got to the relationship chapter. But he's the first one that really instilled that marriage, like investing, like life, is a long game. And in order to fall in love with long games, you really have to pick metrics that are different than just money.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch about money that you don't control. And so, what achieving some of those milestones financially early allowed us to do was really to get creative about the metrics that we want to govern our lives. And it is stuff like, how many unstructured hours do we have in the day to take care of ourselves, to binge watch old shows, or to watch a documentary, or to go to the sauna, or to pick up a weird habit, whatever it is. Like, we have unstructured time as adults to play. The other thing that we believe in is having the energy to enjoy our son at every age and stage. They are not all fun. All phases are not fun. All ages are not fun, but we want the energy to actually appreciate it and enjoy him and not be drained by something that we wanted, right? Like, I remember it was Maya Angelou who talked about how important it was for your face to light up when a child walks into the room. Like, that's what they remember. Does your face light up, or do you get all crinkled and worried and annoyed that they're there? And that's a metric I hold in my head. Like, do I have the energy to have my face light up when my son walks into a room after a long day of school? And it's like, I'm grateful to say that I can do that. That's not a diss on anybody who can't. That's a metric that I created in my life that I focus on. And we're all capable of doing that. And then the other thing that we do is just say yes to opportunities that aren't just about money. Sometimes opportunities are about having fun. Sometimes they're about just learning a new skill or being curious about something. But all of those things have been enabled because we took the focus of creating metrics that are just about getting bigger numbers
That's
somewhere
it.
in our life, to allowing these more qualitative aspects in. Like, this is to me what makes up a quality of life. It is not just chasing big numbers, whether it's income, salary, net worth, whatever. It's about, do you have human experiences that actually change the way that your brain works?
Yeah, I think it's about, avoiding the hedonic treadmill. You hear a lot about this. I don't hear about it nearly as much these days, but it's this tendency to always want something bigger. Going back to what I was saying about those financial goals, I had to trust in that moment when she shared with me that it was like, yeah, it was just another day. I was like, oh yeah. So I am inflating it and making it seem as if it's going to be this amazing thing, even though I have plenty of examples in my life where I wanted something, whether it was a job or a car or clothes, no different than a child. You see these things, you want them, you make them the sun, the thing that your entire universe revolves around. You get it, you're high for a day or two, and then after that you start looking for something else, and the cycle repeats itself. And at some point you just have to trust that the cycle is not going to stop. That's just life. This is a
Hmm.
part of human nature. And the moment you become satisfied with what you have and you appreciate everything that you already have. And again, I recognize that I'm saying this from a place of privilege, but I know for a fact that people who don't have what we have are quick to dismiss the non-quantitative, the non-financial counsel, even though they're saying they want to live the life that we're living. And it was like, I'm
Hmm.
telling you, not just from my own experience, but from the experience and the wisdom of the other people who failed doing the exact same thing that you're doing, right? I'm giving you advice from people who have had millions more than we have, who have failed relationships or are struggling or don't have healthy relationships with their children or don't have good wellness habits and are trying to figure all those things out. And they're paying back tax, stupid tax on all that stuff right now. And so you have to find that balance. You have to prioritize those other things. And you cannot assume that money is just going to solve all of the problems in your life. It gives you the capacity to address the issues that you have in your life,
Correct.
but it's still up to you to focus on those things.
That's it. It gives you the capacity, but it don't give you the willingness, the motivation, the tools.
You still got to
You got to do
you still
that.
got to do it.
That's your work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right, y'all. Well, that was it. That was 4 lessons over 10 years. There were a lot of subtext and sub lessons in there. So if you caught it, you caught it. If you didn't, maybe you'll get it in a couple days. You're a delayed processor too. But thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. If you like what you heard, please let us know. Leave us a 5-star rating and review or drop a comment below. Keep the conversation going. If you married, about to be married, divorced, would love to hear the lessons that you've learned. And maybe we can all share something in the comments section. We will see y'all next week. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.